Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're breaking down a really complex global event.
All right, today we're putting on our international security analyst hats, and we're diving deep into the huge naval standoff between the US and Iran right there in the Strait of Hormuz. And let me tell you, this is so much more than just a military showdown. We're talking about a high-stakes game of, economic pressure, an all-out information war, and some really delicate behind-the-scenes diplomacy.
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First up, we'll get into why the geography here makes this whole area a tinderbox, just waiting to explode. Then, we're going to decode this war of words that's happening online. After that, we'll break down the double blockade strategy itself, look at the massive economic hit for the entire globe. And then, finally, we'll pull back the curtain on the quiet diplomacy that's trying to stop this from becoming a total disaster.
All right, first up, a choke point on edge. And we have to start with the geography, because in a conflict like this, location, it's literally everything. This whole standoff, it all comes down to one single, incredibly vulnerable stretch of water.
And these numbers, wow, they really paint a picture, don't they? Think about it. A fifth of the world's oil and almost a quarter of its liquefied natural gas, all of it has to squeeze through a channel that's only 6 kilometers wide, where ships can actually sail. And it's shallow on top of that. So from a strategic point of view, this incredible vulnerability, that's the whole ballgame. It's the foundation of this entire conflict. It's a logistical nightmare just waiting to be exploited.
Okay, next section, the war of words. Now this is where things get really modern. The whole blockade, it wasn't announced in some stuffy traditional diplomatic meeting. Nope, it was announced on social media. This is a perfect example of how the shooting war was kicked off by an information war. So on one side, you've got the US just projecting absolute total dominance. The language here is all about psychological impact, right? It's designed to signal overwhelming force, to scare off any challenge by saying, hey, the Iranian Navy isn't just defeated, it's completely gone, wiped out.
In Iran's response, it's a masterclass in asymmetrical tactics. They don't even try to debate the military claims directly. Instead, they pivot online and use sarcasm to totally change the conversation. Their point is brilliantly simple. Hey, whether what you're saying is true or not doesn't really matter, because the strait is still closed. It's an incredibly effective way to poke holes in a superpower story without having to fire a single shot.
So that brings us to the actual blockade, a modern naval siege. What does this double blockade even look like out on the water? And what's fascinating is how it connects to military tactics from thousands of years ago.
Well, it's basically a two-step trap. First, Iran uses its prime real estate, its geography, to lock down the narrowest point, that choke point we talked about. Then, the US Navy parks itself hundreds of kilometers away, setting up a second line. And the result? It's what military folks call a kill box, but for maritime trade. Everything gets trapped in between. It's a modern twist on an ancient military siege.
And this comparison to old-school sieges is so important. Back then, a siege would target a city, trying to starve it out over months, maybe even years. Today, a naval blockade targets an entire economy and tries to inflict rapid, crippling pain. But here's the kicker. The fundamental challenge is exactly the same. A medieval army had to worry about its own supply lines. Today, the US has to worry about maintaining international political support. Without that, the whole thing falls apart.
Okay, let's talk about the money, the global economic stakes. Because this standoff, it's not just a military problem. It is absolutely an economic crisis in the making, and the consequences are global. So the main US strategy is to just apply unbearable economic pressure. This is that starve them out part of the siege we were just talking about. And the calculation is pretty straightforward. A total blockade could cost the Iranian economy something like $435 million a day. The idea is to make the pain so high that Tehran just can't take it anymore. But, and this is a huge but, the economic pain doesn't just stop at Iran's border, not even close. You've got around 1,500 ships just trapped. The ripple effects from that are global. We're not just talking about oil either. 30% of the entire world's fertilizer supply is caught up in this mess. That could seriously impact food security. And yeah, that potential spike in gas prices, that shows you just how fast a regional conflict can reach out and hit you right in the wallet.
All right, Section 5, diplomacy's fragile lifeline. So with the stakes this incredibly high for literally the whole world, everyone is desperately looking for an off-ramp. What we see in public is all the military posturing, the tough talk. But the real action, that's all happening behind the scenes. There's this frantic diplomatic push to pull everyone back from the edge.
And it's this really complex web of diplomacy. You've got Pakistan stepping up in a huge way, playing host and providing that crucial neutral ground for talks. At the same time, the US and Iran are talking through secret back channels. Then you have the UK and France. They're busy building a coalition for whatever happens next. And don't forget China. They're using their massive economic influence to insist on open sea lanes, which acts as a major brake on any more escalation from the US. And this praise from a member of the UK Parliament, it's a big deal. It's public recognition of just how vital a neutral player can be in a situation like this. Pakistan's success in getting this ceasefire to happen, well, it's given them a ton of credibility. And more importantly, it's created the breathing room everyone needed to maybe, just maybe, find a way out of this. And this brings us to a concept that is absolutely key to understanding how this whole thing could end: face saving. No major power ever wants to look like it backed down. So this coalition that the UK is leading, it offers a perfect exit ramp for the US. It lets Washington de-escalate, but they can still frame it as a win. They can say, see, our pressure worked, and it forced the international community to step up. The whole thing gets reframed from a US-Iran showdown to a big multilateral success story. So, what's the big takeaway here? The whole situation is just balanced on a knife's edge. On one side, you've got all this aggressive public talk and military moves that could set things off again in a heartbeat. And on the other side, you've got this desperate, quiet, behind-the-scenes diplomacy that's offering a little glimmer of hope. So the final question really is, which one is going to win out?